You are listening to episode 8 of the EU Startups podcast. Today, our head of content, Charlotte, is interviewing Ida Tin, the co-founder and CEO of the successful female health startup Clue. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the EU Startups podcast. Today we're moving the sponsorship message to the end of the podcast and we'll start right into today's interview. By the way, if you're interested to advertise on the EU Startups podcast or on eustartups.com, please contact me through thomas@eustartups.com and I'm happy to forward you our rate card. And now, without further ado, let's jump right into the recorded interview.
Okay, so I wondered if we could just start with a quick introduction from yourself and maybe if you could briefly explain how you started Clue.
My name is Ida Tin. I am CEO and co-founder of Clue. I'm sitting here in Berlin and I started the company because I was really puzzled that there had been so little innovation within family planning specifically, but female health sort of more broadly. And I thought, well, now that we have supercomputers in our pockets and we can collect data in many different ways through sensors, maybe there is something we could do to really bring data into this realm of female health.
Yeah, so in that way, Clue is quite groundbreaking because it allows women to collect data about themselves like on their mobile phone, right? So it's very accessible. And then they can use that data to make decisions about their life, whether they want to have children or not, and to understand themselves better. So thinking about the data, if somebody's thinking of using Clue, could you explain on a practical level what data people can collect about themselves, like what they can track specifically, and then what the Clue app does, what kind of intelligent feedback it would give back to the user?
So at Clue, you can customize what kind of data you're interested in tracking, but we have 32 different tracking categories, and they're all things that are related to your cycle, which is, of course, not your period, but also all the other exciting things that happens throughout this hormonal cycle that we go through for so many years of our lives. So you can track things like pain, sexual activity, mood swings, skin, sleep, many other things that are scientifically proven to be affected by or affecting the cycle. And in that way, people can start building a more comprehensive understanding of what's actually happening in their body through this cycle. And what Clue does is that it helps people recognize patterns and correlations. So, for instance, you might experience migraines that are related to your hormonal fluctuations. Or you might see that your mood is impacted by where you are in your cycle. Mm-hmm. But it can also be things like your sex drive might be impacted through things that are happening in your body. So we really, in a way, you could say that by using technology and by collecting data, we help sort of give the body a voice so that women can hear their bodies even more than what they maybe could without.
So in a way, it also works as a self-education tool and removes the mystery about cycles and reproductive health and helps women to understand their own bodies in a deeper way. So thinking about that educational aspect, was that something that, beyond just the tracking, was that something that you always had in mind from the beginning of Clue? And how has it developed over the past few years? And that educational aspect, how do you see it evolving in the future for Clue?
Yeah, we did recognize, I think from the beginning, that people need to learn and understand and be educated more about how this pretty magical biological system actually works. And then also we understood that it's not enough to collect data and then mirror back sort of a graph or a number. We really had to provide context for people to understand what does it mean. If I being told that my cycles are 36 days. Like, what does that mean? Am I healthy? Am I normal? Like, am I fine? And really help people understand that it's really about understanding what's healthy and normal for you, within some boundaries of what considered sort of clinically healthy. So the educational aspect was important from the beginning. I think over the years, we've come to understand how important it really is and how much that's part of the value that we provide users to give some information that is really scientifically solid. We can see in the landscape of female health that there's a lot of misinformation and myths and even sort of purposefully misinformation happening. So we wanted to give people a place where they could kind of trust that what they read was actually scientifically all right. So that is something that we have, sort of the scientific base, something that we just keep really putting a premium on. And then making the educational content more and more sort of readily available and accessible and sensitive to all the many different situations that women are in is something that we constantly are looking to improve.
And something that I found interesting when I was looking about all the different features that Clue offers is that there's one called Clue Connect, which also helps to not only educate the women using the app, but also the people around them. That's right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's true. So Clue Connect was built because we saw that a lot of women wanted to be able to share some level of information with people that they trust. It can be the partner, but it could also be a flatmate or sharing between a mother and a daughter or a father and daughter or a coach even. So we wanted to do something that felt empowering to women and something where women are in charge of sharing how much, they're the ones who are sharing the data. It's not somebody looking over their shoulder and getting access to something that they would feel uncomfortable sharing. And on the other side, we also saw a lot of men who said, I'd love to understand better what's actually going on for my partner and to support her. And so I think it was sort of a mutual from all sides that, like, if we could use technology to maybe also help facilitate some of these conversations that can be a bit tricky, you can sort of pull up your phone and be like, look, this is where we are. Or for people trying for a baby, to know when to maybe not go on a business trip.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word empowerment there, which I think is really interesting because it's bringing transparency to not only just the woman who's using the app, but also the people around her, which empowers everyone in that circle and in sort of an educational way as well as destroying the taboos around women's health. So thinking about that topic, I heard you speak in another interview about like a cultural shift that we're seeing at the moment, where the general population and women in particular are demanding more agency or choice around many aspects of their lives and using technology to pursue this. And I suppose that when we say technology, many times we're talking about our mobile phone, because it's this powerful little computer that we have in our pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
So to start with sort of how to loop in people in your circle or in your surrounding, for us it's been really important to say that, we're taking a very inclusive approach and saying female health is something that actually touches everybody, because everybody has, first of all, come out of a woman, but secondly, also have people in their lives that it's affecting. So we wanted to make it, to make Clue inclusive and accessible also to men and people that are non-gender binary, to make sure that they can also feel comfortable and at home at Clue. I do really think that there is a big cultural shift happening where people are starting to question some of these taboos or assumptions in culture around menstruation and reproductive health and being, somebody with female biology. Why must it be embarrassing to have your period when without periods there would be no humans on the planet? Why must I hide that that my life is not, a flat line? I have curves,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm circular. Like there are different things happening in my system every single day. And I feel that as a culture, we need a lot more space for these experiences, these life experiences that we have with having this biology. So I feel that there is this sort of expansion where people are starting to pull things into the public domain that used to be very private, because it needs to be seen and it needs to be taken seriously. We need to do research on things. We need to provide work conditions and take this part of life seriously. And so on so many levels, we need more space in culture.
And you just mentioned the research there. I know that Clue uses data in two ways. The data is used to empower the users to track their own bodies, but also Clue is using the data collected to accelerate medical research, which in turn is helping to destroy taboos and push forward health innovation. So what kinds of health projects have you been involved in? Do you work with universities? Do you run your own projects, your own research projects? How does it work?
So we do various things. We recognize that we're sitting on this very unique and large data set on the cycle, one of the largest in the world. And for researchers, having access to this kind of data was, something that they could never have even imagined just a few years ago. And of course, very exciting, because it means that they can do research at an accelerated rate, because they can ask questions and get many answers back really fast, and they can look at much larger data sets. So we felt the responsibility to make this data set also work for sort of a social and societal good. So we share anonymized data with full consent from our users to selected research partners. And they are typically universities or big research institutions. We've been very privileged to be working with some of the top tier research institutions in the world. And so we saw that happening. People came to us and said, hey, could we do a research project together? So we decided to then also actually do a call for proposals to say, hey, science community, we do have this data. What kind of projects could you imagine doing together with us? And we were super excited to see that there was a lot of interest. And we now have, I think, currently 9 science project collaborations ongoing. And it's really so diverse, the questions that people are answering or trying to answer. So it might be research questions like, how does pollution affect the cycle? We're doing a project together with MIT on that. We have looked at how do women, look and experience male condoms. We have looked at how does the cycle affect sex drive and sexual activity, and how does various forms of birth control affect these things, and many other things. And it's, my motivation is, or my sort of hypothesis is that over time, this new knowledge will trickle down and become better care for people. And so we sort of imagine this loop where, a user will enter a data point that can help move science forward, which then in turn informs doctors so that they can give better care to that same user, so it sort of comes full circle.
And you publish some of the research on the app as content as well for the users to read?
Yes, that's true. So one part is that we help researchers publish scientific papers, but then we also take these new insights and turn them into content that is aimed at our audience and make sure that it's accessible and interesting for people who don't have a scientific background.
Yeah, it's sort of translating all of the jargon into something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So still talking about the research, but changing direction a little bit. Traditionally, a lot of health research has focused on male health, which of course could be for a number of reasons, like general discrimination. Women's bodies are cyclical, so maybe they need a different approach when it comes to research. But when we're talking about hormonal contraception and family planning, there's a reduced interest and research in male options, which is kind of the reverse. And it's interesting because men are fertile all the time, not just during a specific time window. So I wanted to ask your perspective on why you think this might be, and do you think that in the future there would be a widespread hormonal male contraceptive, or maybe even an app like Clue, which would maybe track male fertility, but obviously in a different way. I just wanted to know what you thought about that.
Yeah. So I would say generally there's been an acute lack of innovation in family planning method. And it's problematic because women have many different needs depending on where on the planet they are, how old they are, how many kids they have. So we really need a whole variety of options to choose from, I believe. And, the pill was an amazing innovation and I'm grateful for it, but it's not the silver bullet that's perfect for all. So we need more options. And I can see that there are a decreasing interest in taking hormones every day from women. Many women don't feel happy about taking hormones. They might still do it because that might be what they consider to be the best option for them at that point in their lives. I don't think necessarily that we should aim for having men taking hormones the way that women have been doing it. I think we have been suffering through a lot of side effects, and I wouldn't want men to have a lot of side effects either. The sort of the obvious reason why we focus more on female contraception is because it's the women who bear the whole cost if something goes wrong. So they are the ones probably most sort of, diligent about making sure that the birth control is really working. But I think there's a huge opportunity to really think about how we involve both parties in thinking about contraception. And digital is a great way to do that, right? Because you can share information, you can share like a decision-making process in a way.
Yeah.
And to the point about why is it this sort of imbalance in how we do research for things related to female biology and things related to male. I mean, I think it's, there's not one answer. It's very complex. Who thinks about the problems that they decide to work on, what's top of their minds. And if it's all men, then maybe they just simply don't think about these things as much. And then the trouble of doing scientific work on bodies that are not, consistent over a period of time is an extra challenge. But I think these things are becoming more of sort of a conversation topic and something that we recognize that we need to tackle more. But there's still much work to be done. There really is.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So continuing on the medical research journey, what do you think would need to be changed so that medical research and femtech technologies could focus more on female health? For example, like endometriosis or these conditions that have been for a long time somewhat ignored. Do you think, who do you think would need to get more involved? I'm guessing you would maybe say governments or startups, or what's your perspective?
Fundamentally, I think women need to use their voices a lot more. They need to show their anger when they're not getting the care they deserve, but they need to say, no, this solution is not good enough. Like, we need more innovation. We need technology to play a role, or we need more research to be done. I feel that women are suffering sort of silently a lot. We know that on average it takes 7 years for women to get diagnosed with endometriosis, something that is, very painful. And so I actually feel on some very basic level, women need to start speaking up more. And I fully acknowledge that there are many deep, deep reasons why women don't do that. And so this is not to sort of put any blame on women at all. But if you ask me what will start creating change, I think it starts with women raising their voices and, building products and shaping the world. And I think now that we are sort of building the world again through algorithms and technology, it's particularly important that women start being part of that creation process. And I think fundamentally people build things that they care about. And so if women care about these things, they need to go and be part of building them and include men in the process. I deeply believe that we need, diverse teams building things for the world. I'm not a fan of people saying, women building things for women. I really think we need diversity and we need the men because they are still the ones who have, the power. They sit on the money and the venture capital funds, etc. So we absolutely need men to get interested and excited about the opportunities in female health.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then coming back to Clue and the company, thinking about the money that you've raised, I think you've raised over 30 million in the past few years. Could you tell us a bit about the process behind your funding rounds, and if you would have any advice for founders who are trying to close rounds at the moment? It's a bit of a difficult time at the moment with the pandemic. But if you had any advice for the founders who might be listening?
I think it's always helpful to understand that raising money is both a financial conversation you have with people, but in many ways it's also a social process. So really understanding, all the sort of social dynamics around it, who gave the introduction, who really has power inside the organization that you're trying to raise from, what is their decision-making process, and understanding sort of, I think just even filtering out and talking to the right people is a really important first step. Like if you're trying to pitch to a fund who only does later stage and you're a little bit earlier, like that's a waste of time. You'll get the meeting, but you don't get the money. So sort of helping understand who you target is a big, important thing. And then I will say the way that venture capital is structured still, I think this is changing, but still is that they have a mandate from the LPs, which really is very narrow, which is basically money only. So you might have funds who say, they care about, supporting innovation or all kind of things. But my experience is that in the end, they really care about money and growth. And I think this is very backwards, and I think it is going to change. But I think as a founder, you want to be really clear on what are the inflection points where it's helpful to, or where it's possible to raise capital, and be very sort of non-illusional about what VCs will value. And this is also a criticism to VCs. I will say that in the same sentence, because I think that if you only care about money, we as a species and as a planet are going to end up in very strange places. So this must change, but for now, as a founder, I think you need to be really clear what exactly what kind of milestones do you need to reach before you can go out and raise a round. And this, of course, changes as your company matures and and also as the landscape changes.
So it could be about also finding the right timing for you and your company, and not just thinking that you should raise money, but trying to find the right moment for each round.
I mean, often I think as a startup, you don't have the privilege to sort of choose exactly when you raise money. You raise money when you can see your runway is coming to an end. But being clear about sort of what do we need to have accomplished before somebody will invest more money into the company, and really target your efforts and your, focus your energy around reaching these goals, I think is it sounds simple, but it can be really difficult because you maybe want to do things that are sort of long-term investments or things that will make you competitive in the market, but it might not reflect directly on your KPIs. Like there can be many reasons why this is difficult to do, but fundamentally just be really clear, like what do I need to have done so that I can raise money the next time?
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to Clue's business model, I understand that from the beginning it was a free app, and now you have a subscription model. So at what point did you bring that in, and will that change in the future?
We brought that in relatively late, and I would say in a very sort of downplayed way. Now we are sort of bringing that a little bit more up to the surface. And in hindsight, I think I would have liked to have done that a little bit sooner, because fundamentally I believe that the world has to pay for software, because otherwise we pay with our intention, with our data and other things that are intransparent and doesn't create the world that I want to live in. So we have to some extent sort of educated people in this space that the value we provide they can get for free. And in our case, it really has been for free because we've been backed by venture capital, so we didn't have to make any money. But there are many other players in the market who, monetize in ways that are intransparent and I think very non-user friendly. So I'm happy now to have a model that is very, it's very transparent, because I think how you make money defines who you are. And if you don't understand as a consumer how a company is making money, I think you can assume that unless they have raised venture capital that they're still living off, that they are doing something that you might not like as a user. So I feel good about having a model that is very clear. And yeah, fundamentally, if you think you're getting value out of Clue, at some point we ask you to pay something, and hopefully that it's making it accessible to many people.
Yeah. So there you mentioned that that maybe you would have liked to have brought in the subscription model earlier. So thinking about that, what have been your biggest learnings from building Clue, from your entrepreneurial journey, and how could you pass those on as advice for other founders? I know it might be a bit difficult because maybe
big question
specific to your startup and your situation, but maybe you have some pieces of advice.
When I think about it, I would say it's actually not specific to this industry. I would say as a founder, your own drive, your own health, your own energy is the sort of a really scarce resource. I mean, I've now been building Clue for close to a decade, and you have to be anchored in some very deep sense of purpose and meaning, I think, and then you have to allow yourself to care about being healthy, and that might mean a ton of different things to different people. But in my case, it's been important to really take my own sort of inner developmental journey really seriously, my own sort of body awareness journey, and spend resources and time on it, and also sort of not halfway hiding it for the organization, but say, no, this is this is part of what's important. And then also, this might seem super obvious, but I feel that many women are maybe faced with this choice of like, do I start a family or do I start a business? And for me, it was always clear, like, no, I don't accept that to be a choice. I want it to be possible to do both. And that also means creating a work life where it's possible. And I feel as a founder, you have that privilege and that power to actually shape your work life so that it fits you. And especially as women, I just encourage you all, like, take the space you need to be mothers, to be part of a family, to take care of yourself. And because that allows everybody else around you to do it. And that's how we build a healthy work culture, I believe.
Good advice.
Sounds easy. It's hard to do, also for me.
Yes, especially being the founder of a company, I can imagine it's a lot of extra hours, and but you also have that extra freedom as well to build your own schedule and build the kind of work culture and environment that you want to work in.
Yeah.
Okay, so penultimate question. Looking to the future, how do you see the femtech sector changing in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see any specific innovations that you can see now are starting to build up and progressing? Or do you have any kind of predictions about the femtech sector combining with other sectors and destroying more taboos? What are your thoughts?
So first of all, I think we're still early. I mean, there's such great needs out there that can be addressed and that are being addressed, but still most of them by very early stage companies. So I think we'll see a lot more maturity in the products that are available. I believe that we will start seeing a much closer sort of link between sensors, diagnostics, and data sort of processing companies like Clue, so that we'll have rich data sets and we'll have maybe the possibilities to look into the body on a more sort of molecular level. And with more data, I think we will also start seeing some sort of consolidation where people's data will start coming together more in one place. Because right now, it's kind of scattered, right? You have your period data one place, and then you have your sort of running data somewhere else, maybe, etc. So I think we'll see sort of data sets starting to come together more. And then I think we will start seeing, bigger companies being built in this space, and IPOs and mergers and all of that good stuff, which hasn't quite happened yet in femtech.
That's interesting, the idea of having everything in one place.
And also the whole concept of having sort of longitude health data and that being really valuable is something that we haven't quite, as a consumer, being able to sort of leverage yet. I think that will also be coming in the next years.
Okay, so final question. What is on the cards for Clue in the next year and beyond, the next 5 years, for example?
I'm just so grateful that I get to do this work every day, and I don't take anything for granted. There's so many more things I'd love to do for our users. Every stage of the journey as you go through these reproductive years presents new challenges and new questions, and I'd love to be able to help people through all of them. So I think we'll just keep building. Our users are, generous and giving us their ideas and asking us to do more. So hopefully we can just fulfill more of these wishes. There's still a lot of work to be done.
Exciting times. Well, we look forward to seeing what you work on in the future and following Clue. Thank you for joining us today. And we've spoken about a lot of important topics about health and femtech and taboos and lots of cool things. So thank you for joining us and have a good day.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you everyone for listening, and also a big thank you to our podcast sponsor. The EU Startups podcast is powered by ShareWorks by Morgan Stanley. Combining cutting-edge technology with outstanding client service, ShareWorks by Morgan Stanley provides solutions designed for the unique needs of startups. ShareWorks by Morgan Stanley simplifies the complexities of equity plan management, helps you engage with your employees, and provides your business with the tools it needs to comply with local and regulatory requirements. As an integrated platform, everything from HRIS integration to audit-ready financial reporting works together seamlessly for improved accuracy, collaboration, and decision-making. For more information, visit shareworks.com or check out the link in our show notes to schedule a free demo.